All right, we're going to give it a few minutes and let some people come in, and then we're going to start talking about offshore kayak fishing, launching conditions like that. We're going to talk about general tips for helping you guys catch red snapper. You guys let me know if the audio and video is good real quick. All right, we're going to give it a few minutes and let some people come in, and then we're going to start talking about offshore kayak fishing, launching conditions like that. We're going to talk about. Hey Mark, how are you, buddy? How's the audio? Is the audio good? Video good? Leave some comments so I know everything's working. Tuned in. What's up, Josh? How are you, buddy? I'm trying to share a link on Facebook, but I'm not as good as technology as I used to be. I need to find a 12-year-old to take care of all this stuff. Hey Chris, how are you, buddy? Appreciate you guys responding. Good audio and video. Good internet connection. We've kind of worked that stuff out, so it's been good. All right, cool. I'm gonna share a link real quick if I can think of how to use my cellular device. Anybody get to go fishing the last few days or over the 4th of July weekend? Everybody had a good 4th of July? Good. All right, link has been shared. Put that on silent. It's really hard to tell who is who. Sometimes people like Mark have their full name and Josh, and then we have like other names like Super Dad. So I'm not 100% positive on who everybody is, but maybe one day I'll get it all figured out. I'm gonna do some questions and answer stuff. Ideally, if I know how to use this computer, I will be able to show you guys what the surf report looks like, which I haven't really looked into doing yet, but I think I could share the screen somehow. Maybe we'll say that for another time. But I wanted to talk to you guys about surf conditions, what the weather holds. We are going to cancel our charters for the morning. Okay, I got you, man. I know who you are now. We're going to cancel our charters for tomorrow. That way, the weather's going to be bad. There's no reason to go out there. I'll just use the cell phone to show you guys some stuff and talk to you about surf reports, weather conditions, and so on. I mentioned a lot of times I use an app called Magic Seaweed, and you might be able to see it. Whoop. Maybe it'll focus on it. I don't know if it'll work or not. I could share the screen, but we're not going to do that. All right, so Magic Seaweed is a website. If you type in Navarre Beach Surf Report, it's usually the first result. Tomorrow it's calling for current condition says 2 to 3 feet, right? Tomorrow morning, it's calling for at 6 a.m. 1 to 2 feet, which is 1.8 feet at 5 seconds, right? Then it's calling for a 4 to 5 mile per hour northeast wind, which is a lot better than the forecast was, but it's about a 70% chance of thunderstorms. Hey Robert, how are you, buddy? With that 70% chance of thunderstorms, it's just not worth the risk. I'd rather take a smart, not tempt Mother Nature. 1.8 foot at 5 seconds is not that bad because that 5 second interval is pretty nice. But if the wind shifts or picks up, that 1'8" is going to quickly be 2.5 to 3 foot of very, very sloppy conditions. Obviously, we refer to it a lot of times as the beach turns into a washing machine, and those are things you don't want to get into. If you get in there and the beach is nasty and not consistent, and you are in big kayaks like the Predator PL, PA-14s, things of that nature, they don't handle the surf all that well, and you guys could have some problems. So we decided that we would cancel, not sweat it, not run a risk, stuff like that. So let's have another look here. Well, that was today's report. I'm sorry, I was on the wrong page. That was Monday's report. Tomorrow's Tuesday. I'm slacking on my game. This looks a little more accurate, all right? So tomorrow it says at 6 a.m. it's 2 to 3 feet at 6 seconds. We don't want anything to do with that. And really it says 3.5 foot at 6 seconds with a west wind at 8 to 18 miles per hour. So Obviously, we're canceling for stuff like that. Now, we've done a bunch of videos in the past that I've talked to you guys about using these birds of prey jig heads. They're super simple to use, right? Did a bunch of videos on them. They work really well. They have a giant hook. They hold up well. Hey, John, how are you, buddy? They hold up really well. They do a great job. But I want to talk to you about another method, probably one of the funnest methods of catching red snapper off the beach. Recently, the current's been pretty darn bad, so we haven't been able to do this, but we've been using these because the current's been bad, right? So I like to use these little Mustad 3/0s. Now, what you do with this, just a 3/0 circle hook, so tiny, right? Look at the difference of this. Whoop, that's crazy. But it allows you to just take regular 30-pound fluorocarbon like we always use, tie a loop knot directly to the circle hook, and then take a 4 to 5 inch cigar minnow, hook them in the back, the belly, wherever you want to hook them, and toss them out in the water. And you let that live bait swim around on the surface, and that'll kind of get you away from triggerfish. A lot of times the live bait will run from the triggerfish, and then a big red snapper will come up and eat it at full speed. And I often joke with clients that you have two types of cigar minnows, right? You have smart cigar minnows and dumb cigar minnows. A smart cigar minnow, as soon as you put him in the water, he's going to swim back to the kayak, and he's going to sit right below you, right? A dumb cigar minnow is going to take off. He's going to go straight down to the bottom, and he's dead instantly, okay? So this is an awesome way to catch them. We're going to do a video about this on the water. I've already had a few clients catch fish this year like this, but we haven't had a lot of calm days. The current has been ripping pretty much every time we went off the beach, and if the current's going hard, sometimes it's challenging for clients to fish this because you'll start drifting, you'll drift backwards, and it pulls the bait to the surface. That causes a few problems. It's interesting to see. But if you guys are getting bored of catching snapper like this, and you want to change it up a bit, you could downsize to a small little 3/0 circle hook just like this, using the same 30-pound fluorocarbon, quick little loop knot, and you're good to go. It's really that simple. A lot of times people make it super complicated. We'll do some videos on this stuff in the future. You guys have any questions about that, just start typing them, right? And then where's everybody watching from? Where's everybody watching from? We got some Texas in there. We got some Arkansas. Garmin worked out great, installed nicely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Garmin, okay? I took a year and I tried to use a Humminbird Helix 7. I just wasn't a real big fan, all right? Them triggerfish, ocean piranha, were smashing my bait. Had them on top. Yeah, they boiled, man. They're crazy. Look, triggerfish are a wild fish. We had some awesome video of those things, like just feeding them out of the side of the kayak. Pretty cool species, though. They're delicious. All right, I've probably hammered that point away enough that triggerfish is my favorite fish to eat. Tallahassee, more so bored of feeding triggers. Louisiana, thanks for watching, Mark, Jamie, Mobile. Yeah, triggerfish can be, I guess piranhas of the ocean is a pretty darn good expression, right? They show up, they eat everything, they have little tiny mouths, they feed like this, you know, they'll steal all your bait. It's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of using this, because you can just use a larger piece of bait, and it's also the reason you watch those videos. I always talk about, if you watch the videos we've been putting out with clients, I always tell them to real slow, like very slow. Makes it easier to say, right? The reels we're using, they pick up 36 inches of line per rotation. That's not your Penn Senator of the 1980s, right? So they're really quick, right? So if you reel slow, you can slowly pull this bait away from the triggerfish, and the triggerfish will be eating it. But that gives time for a red snapper to come up, push them out of the way, and eat that bad boy. That's one way we avoid triggerfish every single day. The other way is to use this little guy, drop some live bait down there with no weight, and let the red snapper chase the cigar minnow all over the place. We put out a video a while back where you can see that red snapper come clean out of the water in about 60 feet, chasing a hardtail on the surface. So those fish can be very aggressive from time to time. Naples, it's got to be so hot down there in Naples, right? Oh, look, got some people from Michigan in there, Tennessee. Some were in Fort Morgan. I don't know. I feel like I would summer in Tennessee and winter in Fort Morgan. I don't know. It gets too hot down here. All right. What kind of questions do we have about the red snapper stuff? Really, we do the Q&A so you guys can ask whatever kind of questions you want. I know I haven't been able to do it in a few weeks just because, well, there's too many fishing trips, which is not a bad thing. I'm not complaining, right? Just doesn't leave a lot of time to sit down and do this stuff. Or after we start doing the 3D printed stuff and we process probably 10 orders a day, there's not much time left in the day to sit down and do this. So if you have questions, now is the time to ask them. What's going on in this comment section? Today was 83 degrees, but yeah, there's a storm down there, Mark. Yeah, I can see it being cool today, but it's been raining here all day. It's pretty nice. I'm not really upset about the bad weather. I know that the clients get a little frustrated because sometimes they're from out of state and they may only have 2 or 3 days to fish, and then the storm front comes in. But when you do it every day, bad weather is bad weather. Sometimes it's nice to stretch the legs out a bit. Boom. You guys want to see the loop knot we tie with this stuff? I know a lot of you guys use all kinds of crazy knots, but I'll show you the knot that we use when we're tying all this stuff on there. If you guys haven't figured out yet that everything I do in life is about being simple. So we use a non-slip loop knot, non-slip mono loop knot. All you do is take it, tie an overhand knot like so. We'll leave a little bit of tag in just so you guys can see it. Then you just run down here like so. Come back up, pinch that overhand knot, wrap it around here 3 to 4 times. Come back down, go through both holes, moisten, pull tight, give it a snip. Now you're ready to catch whatever's down there swimming around. We've caught all kinds of stuff on that thing over the years. Grouper, sorry. Oh man, hit the mouse. I hit the mic. How loud is that? Grouper, sharks, all kinds of stuff. We were using a four pyramid and 2 5-aught circle hooks about 6 inches apart. 6-inch leads hang off the main line. See, that's just absolutely complicated. Way too much craziness for me. I like to keep it nice and simple. If the trigger are nabbing your bait as you drop it, do you move, do a different spot, or stick it out and keep rebaiting? The new technique about reeling slow is a cool idea, or stick it out. Okay, so one, triggerfish are pretty good at invading places, right? Sometimes you can still get it done with them in the area. Now, I did this the other day. We were fishing. It was myself, Skylar, and my buddy Brian. I had the day off, right? But we wanted to go use the flat fall jigs and see if we could catch a mangrove snapper. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful. It happens, right? Then, well, I wasn't going to go home empty-handed, right? I might as well catch my 2 red snapper. I'm out there. So triggerfish were bad on the vertical drops. If I just opened the bail and dropped it straight down, the triggerfish would instantly be there hammering the bait. So what I did was I pedaled on top of the fish. I was marking the triggerfish right below me. Then I just took that jig head, put a piece of hardtail on there, and I just casted it out in front of the kayak 20 to 30 yards, closed the bail, pointed the rod tip forward. As I drifted backwards, that bait fell in front of the triggerfish. Boom. I stuck a 24 and a 23.5-inch snapper, and then we went home. And we chartered the next day, right? No reason to spend all day out there screwing off. That's only the second time I fished the public reef numbers all year. There were fish all over it. So if you're having that problem with triggerfish, toss that thing out away from you, right? You know the fish are there, but the triggerfish realistically, they're smart, right? If you pedal out there, they come straight to you. they're going to be underneath the kayak. They're going to see the shadow of the kayak, right? So they're just going to be sitting there like, hey Josh, give me some bait, right? So you're just going to keep feeding them. So if you cast that lure out away from them and let it fall, pendulum right down into the strike zone, a lot of times you can make magical things happen very, very easily, okay? Let's see, Jason. I am a beginning kayak angler. My question is, where do you think a good place to practice re-entering the kayak? How do you think a beginning kayak fisherman should get started in saltwater? Okay, so a good place to practice. We live in Tallahassee, so going to one of the lakes right there and practicing there is not a bad idea. You could go and do it in a river system, but you don't want to do it anywhere with any kind of heavy current. You want to do it somewhere where there's no wind, it's calm. You want to practice technique more than anything, right? Getting in offshore or even inshore when it's windy is one thing, but you want to practice initially in a place where it's calm. Knowing that you live in Tallahassee, there's a bunch of kayak fishing groups over there. I would reach out to one of them. I would see if they ever do any kind of get together and do it with someone else, or find a buddy and do it together. That way, if anything does go wrong, you're not, stuck in the water trying to swim to the beach with your kayak attached to you because you can't get back in. You don't want to do that. So have a friend with you or find a group. Go somewhere where they have some experience and then do it with other people. That way you stay safe and don't run into any issues, okay? Living in Tallahassee and getting started in saltwater fishing, there aren't a billion people who know this. I actually graduated high school south of Tallahassee at Wakulla High School. There's a random fact for you. My father and family still lives over there. Great place, beautiful fishing. You have all kinds of water south of Crawfordville, whether you're going to St. Mark's, Alligator Point, any of that stuff in between there. Tons and tons of fish. You just got to go. Saltwater fishing is actually really easy. People make it very complicated. I suggest that you take out very simple lures. You only need one lure. You only need one rod to catch a fish. Get comfortable in the kayak. Spend time understanding the weather. One thing about the area you live is your tide cycle is a bit different than ours. You have two high tides and two low tides a day. If you don't understand what that means, you could pedal to one area at high tide, the tide could fall out, and then the area you pedaled across won't have any water. It's pretty magical. It's a beautiful fishery. The grass is unbelievable. Tons and tons of fish. I would just pay attention to the tide, learn some things. Don't go too far from the ramp at first. Try to pick one launch and fish that area as much as possible, just so you can begin to learn what the tide is doing, okay? That is the first step. Other than that, catching fish in saltwater is easy. They're not that picky, right? They're either eating or they're not eating. We can go into more detail on that stuff later, okay? Let's see here. How about a surgeon loop? Easier to change lures if needed. I'm not a fan. I could retie that loop knot in about 10 seconds, right? If you're going to use a surgeon's loop and you're going to always have a loop, you're going to get tiny nicks in the fluorocarbon, which if you're just redoing it, you might end up getting cut off or broke off because that loop had a nick in it. I'd rather cut off 2 or 3 inches knowing that there is nothing wrong with what I already tied. And on the next fish, I won't run into any problems. Let's see here. Yeah, paddling is not fun. Oh, you're welcome, Jason. Paddling is not fun. Not a big fan. Definitely got to be in shape. Especially on a big kayak. I wouldn't be against paddling a smaller version. I kind of really wanted to fish from a Trident 13 this year. I just didn't have time to get it all set up, and I didn't want to compromise the charter business because I was bored pedaling, right? Paddling can be fun. Just, you got to have the right kayak, especially if you're going offshore. I took your advice and it helped so much. We had a calm 1-foot swell, a nice light wind. The current was strong when leaving. Helped staying light on tackle. Light on tackle is a huge thing. Makes life a lot easier. Bart asked, do you notice a difference using frozen versus live bait for snapper than other bottom fish like grouper? live bait will typically always be better, right? Sometimes the fish are finicky and you want to get there early. So let's talk about last week. Last week, well, right now, we had this big, giant, bright moon, okay? So a lot of people are going to tell you, oh man, they're being picky today. Now, they're not being picky. They fed very, very hard all night. They're no longer hungry. So what we did on the charter was we launched super early. The other day, we were in the water before 5 o'clock. At 5:30, I think it was 5:38. We were on top of the red snapper at like 6:15, 6:30. We already had 4 quality snapper in the boat, and we were just catching and releasing fish, trying to get some over 20. About, I don't know, 6:45, the bite completely stopped. And it's all about that moon. It was really, really bright. The fish fed all night. Once the sun came out of the east and got up and the moon went down, the bite shut off. Now, we expected that. So instead of wasting time catching live bait, we pedaled from the launch straight to where we wanted to fish. We caught the fish before the sun came up because we didn't want the bite to shut off. So we used frozen cigar minnows that had been in my bait freezer from, we bought them at the bait shop, been in the bait freezer. So keep that in mind. It's not always about the bait being better or not. It's about being there at the right time, whether it's tidal movement, moon phase, lots and lots of things that go into it. I would say that live bait is always better because live bait is going to stop small fish from succeeding, right? It's going to keep those triggerfish at bay a little bit longer. Those are the things that matter. But there's no perfect answer. My personal biggest grouper from the kayak I caught last year, gorgeous fish. It ate a live cigar minnow. I actually caught it, no joke. I caught it on this tiny little hook. There it is, right there. Ate a live cigar minnow. I was surprised it turned out to be brown. I figured for sure that it would end up being red, but luck is luck, and you gotta just take it and live with it. Could I use a rainbow trout that I had in the freezer? Yeah, look, you can use anything, okay? All right, so I've joked about this in the past. The best red snapper bait is a bait that it's like a great riddle, right? The best red snapper bait you can only source during red snapper season. And it was a joke for a long time, but I'm not kidding. We clean a lot of red snapper, so instead of just throwing everything away, there was a 2-year period where I would keep the rib cages and I would cut them into smaller pieces, and I would just put the snapper rib cage on the circle hook. Snapper rib cage has a ton of bones in it, right? And they also have large scales. So triggerfish have a hard time destroying it. So this is like super secret pro tip. This is why I delete these videos following after it's over. I'm just going to delete it so no one else gets to watch it. So if you tune in for the live video, you get the good stuff. Put that red snapper rib cage on there from the day before. Drop it down there. The triggerfish can eat it as much as they want. They don't typically pull it off of the hook, which is awesome. You could catch probably 2, 3, 4 red snapper on one little tiny piece of snapper rib cage. So don't be afraid to drop anything down there. Cigs, ruby reds, we've caught them on Spanish, king mackerel, really whatever kind of cut bait you get your hand on. Bonita is a great bait, but it also comes off the skin will stay on the hook, but the meat itself, triggerfish will destroy it. So yeah, snapper rib cages. They work well, but everything works well. I'm sure that your rainbow trout will get the job done too. They are not that picky. So we joke about the red snapper being my pets a lot of time when we go out there because I feed them, right? So during triggerfish season, we'll catch triggerfish and I'll take the carcasses out over top of the red snapper areas or the triggerfish areas, and I will drop the carcasses on top of the fish. It's a great way to figure out what's down there because once you drop everything in there, all the fish come up and you'll be like, oh, look, that's a nice snapper, or that's a big old triggerfish. Usually don't catch them on purpose. We just go and feed them to make sure they're doing well. That's why we call them pets. We do that all the time. It's a good way to find out what's down there. It's a good way to scout things, okay? But yeah, they'll eat their own, so they're not that picky. What other questions we have? That was a good question. What other questions do we have? Oh, YouTube tells me that it's smart if I ask you to push the thumbs up button so other people see the video. So if you get a chance, hit that thumbs up button and ask some random questions about this stuff. It makes it go over better, and you guys get a lot more information about it if you're asking questions. Hey, what's up, man? What's up, Wally? How are you, buddy? What about a Savage 3D Live bluegill swim bait as far as artificial bait? Look, I've caught some snapper on some pretty weird things. I've never caught a snapper on a bluegill swim bait. That would be a new one. But look, man, they're fish. We've caught a ton of red snapper trolling. I know tons and tons of people who have caught them trolling hard baits, just looking for king mackerel, trolling around, and then pedaled over and hooked a red snapper. So I'm sure one of them would eat a swim bait, eat a bluegill. They're not very smart. I've caught them on a hoagie swim bait before, so I don't see why they would have any other preferences. Thank you guys for pushing that thumbs up button. What other questions we have about? It doesn't have to be about snapper. It can be about anything, okay? Snapper, triggerfish, whatever else you got questions about. I'm going to take some time and answer them. Make sure you got a boomerang snip, all right? Best tool ever. This is a small version. The big version does a better job. Anybody got any questions about rigging these guys? Oh, what's up, Joel? How are you, buddy? Did you have a good 4th of July? Cut this off here. Ever use a vertical jig? Yeah, Chris, I have caught some nice fish on those, just like the little cheap. I should have brought some of that stuff in here. Just a little cheap gotcha. They make the little jig fish versions, just like a piece of lead with some paint on there. I've caught some nice snapper on them over the years. Yeah, we've been tinkering around with some flat fall stuff. It's fun. It's a fun way to catch some fish. Skylar was able to catch some nice, well, they were small, but some scamp grouper the other day. Caught 3 in one day, which was kind of fun. We just didn't catch anything big with it. He did end up catching like a 23, 24-inch red snapper, but it's just a lot more work sometimes than it is with clients. They want to go out there and catch them. I go out there myself. I'll use all kinds of random stuff just because it's fun, right? But with clients, the goal is to go out there and put a hurting on them, then come back to the beach. Let's see here. Kevin, I like to use the website. They make an app too, but I prefer to use the website. It's called magicseaweed.com. If you just type in like Navarre Beach Surf Report, magicseaweed.com is usually the first result. I like to use it. And if you're picking a website or anything like that to use, make sure you use the same one every time because you'll get used to the consistency of what they have. If you try to, I know a lot of guys, I compared it to these 3 websites and this one has the best report. Well, that doesn't mean that you're going to get the best report. That means you have no idea what you're going to get. So when you're looking at that, I like to use the same report every time. That goes with weather too. So I'll use Magic Seaweed for the surf report. I use it every time. I don't look anywhere else because they're going to be consistent. If they're consistently wrong, at least you know 1.5 means 2 feet to them, or half a foot means a foot to them, or maybe 5 seconds means 3 seconds. Keep that in mind, consistency. For weather, I use the Weather Channel app on my phone. I don't use anything fancy. They are consistently wrong, but I'm used to them being consistently wrong, and you should keep it that way. Hey, Jack, how are you, buddy? Lost a great fish to a dolphin after telling a buddy. He said, next time open the bail. When the tension is off, the dolphin will release. You ever heard of that? I have never, ever heard of that, Josh. I'm pretty sure once the dolphin bites it, it's game over, all right? You might get it back eventually, missing half of its body. We had a lot of dolphin problems this year, too. I have some pretty terrible viewpoints on dolphins, but it's probably smart for me to keep them to myself. Great day, limited out early that day. Yeah, the fishing's been good. We caught a lot of fish early. Any good tips for rigging and targeting sheep's head? I'm not like the greatest. I'm not like the biggest fan of sheep's head fishing. When I do go sheep's head fishing, I like to use little swing jigs. I don't know if we did any videos on them this winter. I don't have them in here either to go into details about. You can use a bunch of different variety of stuff. 15-pound fluorocarbon, pick a bridge. Where do you live at? Where are we at? Bart, where do you live at? Not a fan of dolphins at all. The dolphin game's been crazy the last year or two. They have definitely turned into very dependent animals. They just come around following kayaks for food. Sometimes if you turn off your fish finder, they'll go away. No joke. That sounds crazy, right? Try it sometime. Um, William, what's a good rod and reel setup to bottom fish as well as trolling the kayak? Hey, buddy, we've done a bunch of videos on that in the past. I like to use Shimano Saragossa 5000s. Now they're pretty pricey, about 260 to 280, but it's a great reel. It's sealed well, holds a ton of 30-pound braid, and they've never let us down, right? For a rod, I like to use a 6'6" to 7 foot medium action Trevally. Usually they're rated for 20 to 55 pounds, which is plenty. You're not going to put out that much drag in the kayak anyways. Big fan. We did some videos on it. Should be, if you go to our website, if you go to our like Navarre Kayak Fishing YouTube and then you search rods for offshore kayak fishing, it should pop up, and then there should be a video similar to that about reels for offshore kayak fishing. Let's see. Hey Richard, how are you, buddy? Let's see what else we got here. We had about 5 dolphins trying to give our snapper lock jaws. But hey, look, man, once the dolphins show up, all the fish will behave way differently than they were initially. It's really ridiculous. We try to catch our limit before the dolphins show up. If the dolphins do show up and they're bad, we usually just pack it up and go somewhere else. Bart, any of the bridges in the area really hold sheep's head. Now, you're kind of doing it the wrong time of year. Late summer can be pretty good, far north into the river systems. And then as fall, winter, and spring, you want to start fishing the bridges. We'll do some videos on that stuff in the future. Jack probably has some videos about fishing for sheep's head because that dude loves that stuff. Ain't that right, Jack? If you're still watching, he loves fishing for sheep's head. It's kind of fun. I like to watch things eat the bait. So fishing on the bottom, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. It's a nice change of pace sometimes, though. Let's see here. I have to go. Here's a fun fact on the way. Oh, Robert, I saw your video about this Sportsman 136. Yeah, quality control has definitely been an issue lately for all the kayak companies. Being behind is no excuse to rush, though. What pound test leader and brand do you recommend for inshore fishing? I use Seagar for everything. I use this Blue Label stuff. It has served me well. For inshore, I use 15-pound fluorocarbon. It does a good job. You can bump it to 20 if you want during the summertime. It'll help with ladyfish and sometimes help with Spanish. But I usually just keep it 15 pounds all year now. Just easier. I used to bump it down to 12 pounds in the winter, but I just don't see it being worth it anymore. 15 pounds is a great number. Does a fantastic job while inshore. I never had any complaints. You won't have any problems with 15 in the Tallahassee area either. St. Mark's area, stuff like that. A lot of oyster bars. Just keep the rod tip up and keep the fish away from them. But 15 should do you well. Electronics attracting dolphins. No, it really does, man. If you turn it off and you pedal away from the fish, a lot of times the dolphins will get bored and go somewhere else after a few minutes. You guys have been asking some really good questions. Cool. The questions make this stuff go better. The better questions you ask, the better answer you get. If that makes any sense. Yes, sir. It's a blast. It's all right. I just can't enjoy sheep's head fishing sometimes. I don't know. It's fun to catch a few of them. I'm not a big fan of catching and killing a bunch of them, eating them either. I don't know. It's not for me. But I'll catch a bunch of sheep's head this winter just because it's a nice change of pace. I get kind of bored of fishing for the same stuff all the time. Crap, just got here. How do you catch the red snappers? Curtis, you already know how I catch the red snappers. 3D print some PDL props. Looks like Old Town won't have replacement props until October. Kind of weird. Makes you wonder. They're definitely importing those props. Because if they had the machine, an injection molding machine, they could just inject them in the factory whenever they wanted to. Or they're having a problem sourcing plastic. printing the PDL prop is not the best in my opinion, right? Additive manufacturing is an awesome process, but it won't work well in certain applications. With the prop, we did those test props, we did some experimenting. If someone took the time to model the exact prop that Old Town offers, uh, then yeah, it would work. But trying to modify the design is kind of foolish in my opinion because you're only using your feet, so you're not going to get too much more horsepower out of it, right? Uh, but charge you $20, but you only got to pay $5 to buy them from Old Town. You just got to get Old Town to make more. That's it. Just Old Town just needs to make more. It's really shocking that out of all things, they don't have props ready to go. You think if they were doing it locally or in America, they could just keep hammering those things out all day on the injection molding machine. Who do I have to kill to change the weather for optimal kayak snapper fishing? Asking for a friend. Hey, look, he had to cancel. I had to cancel on Laz tomorrow, right? So he's upset. I don't blame him, okay? But he lives here locally, so we already put it on the calendar for another day. But the weather does suck. There's no doubt. There's going to be a lot of people upset this week because we had a lot of fishing trips on the book like normal. And we're probably not going to be able to go offshore for the next 4 days, which is not fun, but it's part of the game. Newly a big fan of the modified Albright knot you recommended. I had the hardest time with the FG and others similar. The modified Albright is now my go-to. Dude, the modified Albright knot is a great knot. It's so easy to tie. It's simple, it's quick, and it's stupidly strong. I give people a lot of crap about the FG knot for being 2 inches long and all kinds of, it's not 2 inches long, being an inch long and all kinds of stuff, but it's just so, it's not hard to tie, it's easy to tie, but there's just so much that could go wrong. It comes out of the guide, it's funny. With the modified Albright knot, you can cast it all day without any kind of issues, and that little thing is the same size as that loop knot, so it doesn't take up any room. Let's see here. I appreciate it, Rob. Thanks for watching, buddy. Do you fish for mahi-mahi and how? There's one way to fish for mahi-mahi. You're in the Gulf of Mexico and they magically appear. That's it. That's the secret. You just got to be out there. You can look back historically. 2015 was probably the best year for mahi-mahi in the history of the Gulf Coast. They were everywhere. There were dudes in sit-inside kayaks from the Midwest catching mahi in 10 feet of water on top of the second sandbar on Rebel R poppers. Dead serious. Crazy. Look it up. It's on the fishing forum. It was the best year in the history. Mahi-mahi are not very smart. Remember, it's the fastest growing fish in the ocean. So a lot of times when you are seeing these little tiny little fish, that fish could be 2-3 weeks old, okay? When you start seeing those 20 inches or so, he's probably only a month old. They grow extremely fast. It's unbelievable. Keep that in mind. A lot of times, just a small little circle hook, toss it out in front of them, it's game over. They'll eat chum, cut bait, live bait, lures. They're not very smart. If you are out there, you're kind of think about yourself as a floating fad, right? So you'll be pedaling along, and bright sunny days are usually the best time. The sun will be up, beating down on you, which is terrible. Wear some sunscreen. And then all of a sudden, the fish will just show up underneath you, right? You want to hook the first one, you can just leave the rod in the rod holder. His friends will hang out. Fall is a great time. They usually show up in decent numbers, and they're usually bigger than they were in the spring, remember, because they grow so fast. I'll tell you, 2015 was wild. 2015, I was catching them at 26 feet of water 3 years ago. So look, it was 2015. I launched the kayak east of the Navarre Pier. This is long before a boardwalk existed or any kind of blue mat. The parking lot right next to the pier. I came over to the beach. I had a PA-12 at the time, speaky rod, and I was catching little baby hardtails. Greatest bait in the history of anything. I love those little dudes. Little baby hardtails, little baby blue runners, 2-3 inches long. live well was like full of those things, right? I'm talking about catching them 5 at a time. And I look down, and remember, I am not outside the length of the pier. I'm probably in 25, 28 feet of water, super shallow, and there are just 5-pound mahis swimming around the kayak. Like, I was like, what kind of Christmas present is this? I had, remember in a PA or any kind of Hobie, it has that pedal system. There's water, and I was just leaving hardtails in there, picking them up, crunching their heads, and just shoveling them out, just pitching them out of the kayak like I was dealing cards, right? And these mahi were just blowing them out of the water. Circle hook, 30-pound fluorocarbon, crush the fish's head, hook it in the back, pitch it out on the surface, point the rod tip at the bait, and they would just race to it. Whack, boom. I caught 3 over 6 pounds in like 30 minutes. I didn't even have a fish bag. Truthfully speaking, I went out there looking for one species, and it wasn't a mahi. I instantly had 3 6-pound mahi in the kayak. It's unbelievable. I was back in the parking area, in the driveway, 2.5 hours, and my wife was like, "Why are you home?" And I was like, "Check these out." Yes, we have fish tacos, obviously. Baby hardtails are life, no joke. We got a lot of questions here. Mahi fishing can be fantastic, but remember, you just got to be in the right place at the right time. I had clients catch 10 last year. Last September, they went out there on some rentals. It was a rental clients, right? Put them out there in the water. They went off, did their thing. They came back and had a cooler full of mahi. They just swam right to the kayaks, and that's how it happens. Don't go looking too hard, okay? What fishing is good early September? Pretty much everything is good in September. Like, not a joke. Everything. Let's see here. What lure technique do you think would be good starting out around St. Mark's, Alligator Point area? Like, man, there's so much water there, and it's so good. Anything you're comfortable with. If you are familiar with bass fishing, just go bass fishing, okay? Like, when I started saltwater fishing, remember, I'm just a kid from northeastern Ohio. All I ever fished was ponds. I had 2 favorite lures. X-Rap 08, which is still an incredible bait. They just don't hold up very well to large redfish. And a white or pink Zoom fluke with a 5/0 hook. And really, I probably used a 4/0 originally. I started using the 5/0 after I had more experience because I wanted a little bit extra weight to make the lure fall. Anything like that's easy, man. Anything you're comfortable throwing. Now, you don't want to use a 10-inch worm, right? But if you're comfortable throwing topwater, throw topwater. I'm a huge fan of topwater. It's a fantastic search bait. It will help you find fish and catch fish. If you are a fan of throwing a Zoom fluke or something like that, any kind of fluke, throw the fluke. It's a great bait. A lot of times in the summertime, you have a lot of floating grass, so a weedless presentation is key. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get on a website. Don't watch 27,000 YouTube videos and listen to every dude tell you got to have this lure. You got to have it in yellow. You got to have it in blue. You got to have it in purple. Don't do it. Just get whatever you're comfortable with and go fishing. You will learn more on the water than you ever will learn watching these YouTube videos, okay? We caught them almost on the bar. It is crazy. Look, telling you. If the mahi ever show up like that again, I'm going to live on the beach. Our rental kayaks do not have electronics on them. September to early October equals fire. Very true. Are there any small live fish that aren't good for bait? Well, you can't use any of your game species or anything like that, so you couldn't use any kind of like red snapper, baby, anything like that. You couldn't use baby Spanish mackerel. Everything else is pretty much fair game, right? A bunch of random fish out there, like you got these little leather jacks, which will stab you. I went to their great bait. You got these little moon pie things, which die real quick and flip over. There are some things, but really, cigar minnows, herring, sardines, stuff like that, you're not going to have any problems offshore. Same with inshore, pinfish, stuff like that. Pretty much everything's easy. Color catches fishermen. Fact. Flukes are one of my favorites. I got a lot of them. No problem, Jason. You'll catch a lot of fish, man. It's super, super easy. What other kind of questions do we have? Those are all really good questions, though. You guys are killing it. If you're thinking about a question, someone else is probably thinking about it too. So when you ask it, it helps everybody who's watching. Who else is disappointed in the weather this week? Because I know there's a bunch of people disappointed in the weather. Boom. What else? It's raining right now. I don't know if you guys can hear it in the background. Lots of rain on the weather app though. Can you teach me how to fish? Look at this guy being a troll. Paycheck Pro Staff. I see you. I know what you're doing. It's pretty entertaining though. You do need someone to teach you how to fish though. I've been seeing it in action lately. Saturday is bad. Let me look at this surf report again. All right. Every day is bad. The weather report looks crazy. All right. Tips on staying overstructured. Man, that's a great question. That's a great question, Joel. Someone else actually asked me this question this morning. So let's start off with what you should not do. You should not use an anchor. A lot of guys will be like, you know what? I'll just use an anchor. You should not use an anchor. One, to properly anchor, you need to have 3 times the length of rope as the depth. So if you're in 60 feet, you need 180 feet of rope. That's pretty foolish, not to mention you'd probably be pointing backwards. Hook it to your anchor trolley. Then it'd be a complete shit show. If you ever flipped in, you'd have 180 feet of rope attached to the kayak somewhere. Yeah, you don't want to mess with that, okay? That is not what you want to do. So anchoring is a no-go. If you have a paddle kayak, you're pretty much just gonna have to try to paddle up there, drop it in the spot. It's super doable, okay? You can kind of pedal in place if you know what you're doing. One thing that's really important that I feel like is often overlooked with staying on the spot, a lot of your electronic companies started putting out cheaper fish finders because, well, one, they find a different price point, sell fish finders. But when you start looking at like a Garmin, let's say a Garmin 7CV quality unit, but the refresh rate on the GPS is super slow. So you never truly know where you are. If you spend the money and buy a fish finder with a higher end GPS, it'll refresh quicker. That way you always know where you're at. That's important. If you're in a paddle kayak and you say the fish are here and the current's going 2 miles per hour, because the current's been pretty crazy. We're definitely drifting 1.5 miles per hour the day, and you're drifting off and you know you're dropping your bait. Maybe your bait's not hitting to here. You need to pedal up here or paddle, drop your bait into the strike zone, and then drift over the fish. If you do it right, you hook up every time, or most of the time, and you have your limit very, very quickly. Place is going to be a challenge unless you have quality electronics and you really know what you're doing. The first thing I do, even with clients every day, when we get to a spot, I'll pedal up to the spot, we'll get it, I'll mark the fish, I'll stop everything I'm doing, I'll put the rudder straight, and I'll drift. And that way I can see that I drifted at, like this angle, or I drifted this way. So I can pedal straight back up and we maintain that same drift the entire time. That way you can watch the current shift as well. It's pretty interesting, okay? Keep that stuff in mind, go forward, learn which way you're drifting. I see a lot of guys go up and they'll angle the kayak sideways, but you drift faster sideways. Always try to keep the kayak pointed into the wind or into the current. That way you drift slower. There's no way to stop it. You can go out there and you can get you an autopilot and spot lock, but you might go swimming. Or your battery might die. I had 2 fish break, not cut my 50-pound braid. Could have just had some messed up braid, or you could have touched the kayak with your braid. We've caught a lot of quality fish out there over the years without using anything higher than 30. So breaking 50 is kind of hard. got poured on the water on Friday. We got rained on. We got rained on multiple times last week on the charters, but the fish were there, and the clients don't care as long as they're catching fishing. You should be getting broke off on tarpon right now. Yeah, you should be. You can try to get broke off out there. You probably get rocked in that surf first, though, right? Try to launch into that 2.5-foot surf plus 15-mile-per-hour wind. Won't be any fun. Definitely disappointed about the weather. Sunday looks good. Yeah, it's hard to tell. You get that 5-6 day forecast. The weather could change any 3 seconds. In your opinion, does it matter what time of day you go fishing? All right, Richard. I learned a lot over the last 4 years that, 4 years ago, people would have been like, you know what, Nick, you're probably a pretty good fisherman. And I've been like, yeah, you're probably right. But now, I've learned so much more because I have to go every day. There was a time where I could be like, the fishing's not going to be good. Let me just stay home. That's not the case anymore, right? You got clients from all over the country, all over the world. You can't tell them no. They don't want no. They want you to have an answer for every single situation. So I can't say there's a better time than another time because the pattern changes, but you have to learn how to catch them a different way. The way we approach fishing at 6 a.m. is not the same way we approach fishing at 2 p.m. We're going to fish different places. We're going to look for different things. We're going to fish shallow in the morning, deeper when the sun's up most of the time. We're going to fish for redfish when the sun's up instead of trout. You have to make those changes, understand that the patterns change all the time, so you can't, being a guide, I can't sit here and say, well, the fishing is going to be better, let's not go. I don't have that option, so you really learn that the fish have to feed, just like you're going to eat lunch. Even if it's hot, you're going to go inside and eat lunch or something, or at least snack on something. You have to find a way to catch them. So keep that in mind. The fish always have to eat. You just have to figure out which ones are feeding where and how you can catch them. 4 years ago, I would have told you, you can catch them, but it's not worth the effort. But once you're getting paid to do it, every day is tournament day, right? So you kind of got to always have an answer. It's kind of challenging, right? But it might be a terrible way to look at it, maybe a morbid way to look at it, but you have to be able to find the fish and make them eat regardless of the time of day. I'm from Arkansas. It's weird to break off fish. Look, there's some big fish swimming around down there. It's also very easy for those fish to get you back in the structure, and that could have been one of the reasons it broke off. Adam, do you sell your rentals and drives when used or not? We sell the kayaks at the end of the year, right? Usually depends on what the calendar looks like, but I'll start looking into selling them about November, December. Just depends on when those cold fronts show up. The cold fronts really dictate how many trips we're going to run throughout the fall and winter. I guess ram mounts are outsourcing their plastic because you can't get those either for the fish minders. Yeah, there's going to be a lot. I feel like you're going to have, even for the rest of the year, there's going to be a lot of problems sourcing products everywhere. I think a lot of the companies are about to really show how much we depend on China. Obviously, everybody knows we depend on Malaysia, China, all these Taiwan, all these companies. If you look at like Shimano, any of these big companies, their reels are all out of stock everywhere. Obviously, I have, James showed me all the rods I want to order are on back order. So it's been a very weird year for that stuff. You're going to see some pretty interesting things, though. A lot of products are about to go out of stock. Maybe things will start being made in the country again, which would be a great thing, right? Anchoring sucked with my paddle yak. A second year, no anchoring. I would paddle past the point, drop it, then still float past it. Paddled and dropped. Kept my rod in the holder. Yo, keeping your rod in the holder is not a good idea. Ain't that right, Brian? Ask Brian's. Okay, we got a buddy named Kenny. Rod in rod holder, big fish, go swimming. Lose lots of stuff. Paddle away from structure. Manage your drift with your pedals or your paddle. Look, Brian paddled for a long time, right? He caught a lot of awesome fish in a paddle kayak. And then he decided that his legs were stronger than his arms. Dude, the great sabiki shortage. That's really funny because I went in a half hitch and bought $100 worth of sabikis, like, I don't know, a month ago, because yes, I saw this coming and I refused to be without tons of sabikis. So yes, sabiki shortage. Let's see. Last year you mentioned trolling the 40-foot depth, and that advice was gold. You also mentioned the dead zone depth with no activity. What was that depth to avoid locally? Big fish plus rod holder equals swim time, no doubt. All right, Josh. So 40 foot's a pretty magical number for most of your species, especially pelagic, especially in the fall, right? Or spring, fall. Uh, when the water starts to cool down a little bit, 40 feet is magical. Now, you can look at 60 feet or so, 55, 60 feet plus as being a dead zone. One of the reasons when the fish are out there is they're going to be, here's the surface, the fish are going to be suspended. They'll go out there when the water gets hot. Now, you can still catch them. You just need to add weight or use a downrigger. Tons and tons of ways you can do it. We'll talk about this some other time. But a lot of times when people will be trolling 40 feet of water, they're catching fish, and then the water drops off, and then they'll keep trolling their baits right here. And then they'll just be pedaling around in 65 feet of water, and they might not be getting a lot of bites because the fish aren't on the surface. If you want to catch those fish, you need to put some lead on there, bring your bait down to that 30-foot column, and then cruise slow. A lot of times what we do is we'll get out in that dead zone. There's no bait, you're not catching anything. Tons of snapper out there. We got to put in the time to find them. You can pedal 40 miles back and forth before you find one red snapper spot. But if you are pedaling along in 65 feet and you slow down with live bait, your live bait will start to swim around. Sometimes your live bait will swim down. Probably should get on the camera. That's hilarious. Your live bait will swim down, and then the bait will get eaten. So typically, anything over 65 feet, 60 feet, 65 feet can be challenging to troll in because a lot of times people aren't prepared and they keep doing the same thing they were doing in 35 to 45 feet of water. So if you're going to troll in deeper water, you need to change your tactics up a bit. Tons of ways to do it, just whatever works best. Trying to get a used Predator PDL now. Yeah, any kind of pedal kayak will serve you well. Paddling, I'm truthfully 100%. I have never paddled a kayak offshore. That drifting is great. That's a good point, Brian. You can just drift around out there, let your bait do its thing. A lot of times I don't drift out there because when I'm out there, I'm looking for bottom structure. Okay, I'll be honest with you. If I'm out there, there's a reason we found a lot of cool snapper spots in life. It's not from sitting on the beach. Yeah, drifting is fun though. You catch some nice fish drifting. You also could catch some remoras. Ask Brian. I'm a remora slayer. We'll have clients slaying remora out there when we drift around sometimes. Okay, so I've never paddled a kayak offshore. So we talked about earlier, I seriously considered purchasing a paddle kayak this year just to do it. Maybe kind of give my legs a break from time to time because face it, I pedal a lot. We pedal a whole lot. Sometimes my legs don't like it. So, talked about earlier, it's kind of nice to have a day or two off so my legs can take a break. But I'm still considering paddling. I talked to Skylar about some stealth kayaks and stuff, but they're super long. Just kept my mind up. Any tips for fishing around the full moon? Always seem to do terrible around full moons. Yes, we talked about this a little bit earlier, Curtis. Launch earlier. That's it. Go earlier. If you're going snapper fishing, avoid catching live bait because that time period when the live bait is biting really well, so are the snappers, so are the kings. So if you just use dead bait, frozen bait, you can succeed at your goal before anyone else leaves the beach. 2 days ago, we were in the water real early. We had our limit. They had 2 clients. They both had their limits of red snapper, plus we probably threw back 7 or 8 17-inch fishes. We knew it was going to be slow. We ended up catching like a 20, a 26 and 3/4, and then like 2 18s, but we weren't going to keep the 17s. You got to go early. You gotta understand what you're doing and not be afraid to put that kayak in the water in the dark. Can be daunting, can be a little, what is out there? But if you just go, a lot of times you can see the moon is bright. There's no trees out there. Nautical twilight, you can see pretty good. Go. There's plenty of fish out there, and they're going to feed very heavily while that moon is still bright. Once that moon goes away, I see dudes show up at like 9 o'clock. Good luck. I would love to see the paddle trip. You could even use one of mine. I don't know if I'm swole enough to be out there paddling around. I had to hit the gym before I got some water, man. I got some, I don't know beer. I got some water though. I've always wanted to paddle out there. Just, we used the pedal kayaks for so long. It's hard to make the decision. If we had really rough surf, I would definitely use the Trident, but we don't really have that bad of a surf. Our surf really is sloppier than it is big, right? I do want to go out there in a paddle kayak sometimes. The nice thing about paddle kayak is it's lighter. You can get it across the beach easier. A lot of times, you pick the right kayak, you put your rods inside of it, which is super important, especially if the surf is big. I know, look, so this guy right, so Next Level Fishing TV, right? So Texas, right? I can't remember your first name. I'm terrible at names. They have some really bad surf. They have breakers. We don't have any breakers. We don't go beyond the breakers. We go offshore. Something like a Trident, something that paddles well, handles the surf a whole lot better there. Because they have to come through the breakers where we don't. So if we live somewhere like that, I would use a paddle kayak for that. But our surf is not big or challenging. Things to consider. That's why I don't spend any time out there in a paddle kayak. Because if I would love to get my hands on like a Stealth, launch it in that surf and see how fast we could go and how far south we could go. But that being said, I also don't get much time to go fishing without clients. It doesn't happen very often. Do you prefer fluoro over mono? If so, why? I prefer fluoro. I won't say you're gonna have a huge difference in results. It's one of those things that once you use it and it doesn't fail you, you don't go back. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that you have to have fluorocarbon, right? That's not the case. The fish really aren't that smart. We do fish some really clear water, but there's been tons of tests done that the difference in visibility between mono and fluorocarbon is not that great if you buy quality mono. Mono does tend to dry out sometimes and have problems, become brittle, but if you're changing your leader every other trip or so, you're never going to have that problem. So keep it in mind. I prefer to use fluorocarbon just because it's never let me down, right? That's all. Does size of the kayak make a big difference? For example, I have a Native Slayer 10, was thinking I may do something bigger. It makes a huge difference, buddy. Think about surface area, right? So I fished from a Native Slayer 10 when I first got out of the Air Force. My back was really, really messed up. And a 10-foot propel weighed 57 pounds without the pedals, right? So I could unload the kayak, put the pedals in it, and it didn't bother my back, which was a huge deal to a guy who still wanted to go fishing, but didn't have the ability to move his PA-12 anymore. It was still in the garage. I just couldn't move it. I wasn't a big fan of the propel, but it did let me fish, which was important to me. Once you break the 12-foot mark, you're going to have a faster kayak, right? Surface area becomes a giant factor. Once you get to 13-foot, you even have a faster kayak, right? The weight is distributed better. That stuff becomes important. Now, the 10-foot kayak will usually turn better. It's more maneuverable, but that's not going to really... It doesn't affect me. I'm usually fishing big bodies of water, so if I can't turn around in a 10-foot area, I don't care. That's something to consider. I don't personally care. The 13-foot or bigger kayaks typically are more stable. You can carry more stuff. I don't know how big of a person you are, but I know some guys who have bought like 106, like 10 and a half foot kayaks, and they're like 6'3", 6'4". And I fished with them, right? And the front of the kayak will kind of sink down a bit because you have a 20-pound pedal system right next to the front of the kayak, and then you have a 240-pound grown man, and the kayak will kind of sit down, and when you pedal it, it pushes water instead of cutting through the water. So you work a lot harder to go places, whereas a 13-foot kayak will distribute that weight and you can go faster, easier. So keep that stuff in mind, okay? Keep that in mind. I would definitely go with the bigger kayak. Chris Castro. See, I knew that. I'm just terrible with names, all right? Don't go to Pompano if you have a paddle, unless you're swole, have a Viking, or a Stealth. Bryant went to Pompano to fish an extreme kayak fishing tournament. Unfortunately, he hurt his shoulder because the current was wild. Then he bought an Outback, so pedaling is easier. Pedaling is a lot easier. Nathan said, it's a long paddle. I've done it twice and bought the pedal kayak. Didn't you pedal a Bonafide out there? Didn't you pedal a Bonafide out there? Or paddle a Bonafide out there? Because that's a lot of work. What kayak cart do you recommend with balloon tires? I got a 17 Outback. I want to stay away from scupper style carts. I like to invest in a cradle style. I can use all of my kayaks. You know, I have used the Fishing Mate cradle cart for 4 or 5 years with fantastic results. It served me well. It had those big orange tires. We did a video on it a while back. This is called a Fishing Mate cradle cart. Does a good job. Not the best solution. About $220. Well, I say it's not the best solution, but I've never really had a problem. And I use it every day. I've had to make some modification to it over the years so it holds up a little bit better. But there's so many companies that make quality balloon tires now. Malone makes a Mega Sport, maybe what it's called. I don't know what it's called. Malone something. They make balloon tires. Suspends makes a balloons tire kit. I like using the Fishing Mate cart because it has an axle that comes across the bottom, and I can strap through my pedal hole to the axle. It's super quick. It only requires one strap, and I can move a lot of kayaks very quickly. We did a video on it. Check it out. It's not for everybody, but I prefer that cart because it's so easy to install. It'll be really easy to install on your Outback as well. That's what I first used it with, was an Outback, because you can just pick up the front end, set it across the axle, and then you can just run the strap through the Mirage hole to your front handle, pull it tight, pick the kayak up from the rear and push it, and it does a really, really good job. How line shy would you say the fish are in Navarre? You guys use a lot of still here in Texas. Hey, Chris, are you talking about trolling for king mackerel? If so, we use wire, 7-strand, usually 27 to 40 pound 7-strand. King rigs, they're not really that picky as far as their king mackerel. I wouldn't call them too much, leader shy around here. I do run a 6 to 10 foot section of fluorocarbon in front of the wire, and I typically only run 18, we'll say 12 to 24 inches of wire, just because you don't need any more. Now I know you guys have some super dirty water. You could probably run 6 foot of wire. It wouldn't make a difference other than landing the fish. But our king mackerel aren't that leader shy. But I do like to use that fluorocarbon. We just have so many other fish that show up. I don't want a sailfish or a mahi to show up and see straight braid to wire. I don't want them to get spooked or not bite because I was too lazy to tie some fluorocarbon because our water is crystal clear. Do you use a swivel when tying leaders, tie lines together? Kevin, I use a modified Albright knot. Super strong, easy to tie, very small connection, can go through the guides very, very easy. I've used it for years with never had a problem. I use it from everything from sight fishing, redfish, chasing trout, to catching all the snapper, king mackerel, whatever we're targeting. If you know how to tie a knot, don't change it. That's like one thing I try to preach all the time. Just because someone else does it differently, you don't need to change it. If you are comfortable tying the knots that you tie and you're not having any problems, don't change anything. If the uni to uni works for you, keep using it. If it doesn't work for you, then yeah, I would recommend using the modified Albright knot, but don't go out of your way to change anything if you aren't having any issues, okay? The 10-foot topwater is unbalanced if you are short. Yes, one thing to consider. Okay, this is something that obviously we have a lot of kayaks and I spend a lot of time around them. And I spend a ton of time around kayaks with people from all over the country. So you get to see maybe a 6'6" person sits in a kayak different than a 5'2" person. One thing to consider about the different manufacturers will use Hobie and Old Towns because it's two different systems. On the Hobie, you can adjust the pedal positions, right? So you're always sitting in the same spot. That means every person sits in the middle of the kayak and the pedals are adjusted to them. Now, on an Old Town, a Native, the majority Jackson, you adjust the seat to the pedals, right? The pedals are in a fixed position. You pull up knobs or you untwist knobs and you slide forward, and then you put your feet on the pedals, which is different. You know, it's weird. So if you have a very short person in a short kayak and you pull it up and you slide the seat forward, now every bit of the weight, pedals and person, are in the front half of that kayak. So the kayak will sit like this. So when you pedal, you go slower. That's a great point. See, those are the points. She is very short, okay? Those are the things that really change how the kayak performs, and it's something to consider. A taller person who sits further back in the kayak will make the kayak sit at an angle like this. And if the front end is out of the water, the kayak will cut through the water better. It's very interesting to see. I see it in the Predator PDL often because we have a bunch of them. We have a ton of people who sit in them every day who are all different, heights. Nathan, you bought a Vibe Shearwater. How do you like it? Every company has mixed quality control issues. I know I've seen a few problems, but every company has that problem. Do you like the Shearwater? Suspends is good. Yeah, the Suspends cart is a good cart. What do you think the minimum reel size for offshore fishing? I got a 4,500 pen spin fisher for reference. I don't think you have any problem with the 4,500. You just need to realize what you're doing. Okay, so this is things to consider. We snapper fish the majority of the time in 60 feet of water on average. There are 3 feet in a yard, which means that 60 foot of water is only 20 yards deep. If you fill up a pen spin fisher with 30-pound braid, you're probably going to put, let's see here. 10, 4,500, 30-pound braid. Let's find out exactly how much it holds. You're probably putting 200 yards of line on there. Let's see. The internet's an amazing thing. There's already an answer right here somewhere. Let's see here. Oh, we're going to have to do some math, evidently. Let's see here. This says the 4,500 will hold 190 yards, 180 yards of 30-pound braid. So if you know that you are dropping in 60 feet of water and you have 180 yards of line on your reel and you drop 20 yards of it, you still have 160 yards to fight a fish. Now, contrary to what most people think when you're trolling for king mackerel, when that drag goes off, say you have the lure or the bait fish 30 yards behind you, everybody freaks out on that initial run. They're like, I'm going to get spooled. We caught a lot of king mackerel. I have never had a king mackerel more than 100 yards from my kayak. I mean, I would love to catch a bigger one that would, but typically speaking, off of Navarre Beach, anything like that, there's a few big king mackerel caught every year, 30 to 40 pounds, but maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 on a good year. There's probably been 1 or 2 caught this year so far. There's been more people out there, so yeah, there's been a few more caught than normal, but with your 4,500, you should be fine. You just need to know that you need to get the kayak turned around and pointed to the fish. So you're pedaling this way, the rod's behind you, the fish is behind you, it hits it, it runs this way. You got to get the kayak turned around so you're fighting the fish correctly. And then a king mackerel or any fish is going to pull the kayak all over the place. So you use the kayak to wear the fish out as much as you use the drag system to wear the fish out. Keep that in mind. Plays a big part, right? You're not in a boat. You're going to get pulled around by the fish. Skylar had a buddy last year. They were trolling with a 4,500 with an X-Wrap on it, and they caught a 25-pound blackfin on the 4,500. The blackfin fights far harder than a king mackerel for a much longer duration, and will definitely strip more line off the reel. So keep that in mind. 4,500 is fine. Don't overthink it. If it's all you got, it's what you got. Make the best of it. Oh, okay. You had a Shearwater before. Okay, I thought you had a Bonafide. I think I remember you posted a picture of a blue kayak. I didn't realize it was a Shearwater. What kind of pedal kayak did you buy? All right, let's ask a few more questions, and then we're gonna wrap this up. I appreciate you guys watching the video. I appreciate everybody pushing the thumbs up button. Um, I was lazy. I left the performance shirt pre-order up on the website. There's a link below. So if you guys want to buy some performance shirts, they're on the website. I had the non-hooded version and the hooded version. It's a pre-order. It was supposed to end on July 4th, but I have been busy and I didn't take it down yet. So you guys might want to take advantage of that. We only do the apparel and pre-orders now. Between the charter business, the 3D printing stuff, got pretty busy. Don't have too much time to focus on apparel, so we've been doing a pre-order every 3 months or so. The last live video, we had a bunch of questions about performance shirts and buying merchandise. So if you want some, your chance is up on the website. If you purchase it, I'm greatly appreciative. If you don't, it's not a big deal. Gotta run, Nick. Thank you for your time. Hey, thanks for watching, Josh. Oh yeah, you got a Big Water 132? Yeah, that's a good kayak. Same thing as a Predator. They're a good kayak. It'll serve you well. They're very durable. We beat the crap out of them every year, and they keep on ticking, so that's a good thing. What other questions we got? Any questions before we shut this thing down? Sometimes it's hard to read that comment section and keep up with what's going on over there. Where's everybody watching from? I know we had some people from Texas, several people from Texas, Michigan, Arkansas, Tennessee. Where's everybody watching from? Let's see here. Who's used these little hooks too? I got a lot of people who used to laugh at me about using these little hooks, right? Can you eat rabbit fish? Look, man, we are live on YouTube in the place where people love to go live and catch and cook random species. I am positive that someone has caught, filleted, and cooked a rabbit fish. I'm not saying that I would enjoy eating a rabbit fish. Might be too spoiled. I mean, I would try it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to make it happen. Joel, maybe you should do a catch and cook on a rabbit fish, just so we can watch, find out what it tastes like. Look, dudes have eaten remora, lizard fish. I doubt someone had to do a catch and cook on a rabbit fish. You know what? Following me exiting out alive, I'm gonna go find it and watch it myself. I'm telling you, if you haven't caught a red snapper on a small little hook like this, you need to give it a shot with a live bait. It's a blast. Texas, Taylorsville, Navarre. I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys have any other questions, go ahead and just shoot me an email at nick@navarrekayakfishing.com. The goal is to do this, once or twice a month. The charter season makes it a little bit challenging. I still appreciate all the orders for the 3D printed stuff. That stuff is full go. Pretty easy to manage, so makes it easy, right? Saw a video the other day where people caught sand fleas. Sand fleas. Garrett, thanks for watching, buddy. Yeah, I'm not eating a sand flea. No, I'm good. That's crazy. Fried them up. That's nuts. That's interesting. Hey, look, Jason, about the confidence thing, all right, so you don't need to look at it like you're going out there to slay some fish. Remember, it's a learning experience. So don't look at it or be discouraged as I might not catch a fish. Every time you're on the water, around the water, you're learning something. Even like myself, I learn new things every single day because things are constantly changing. The way we approach fishing now compared to 3-4 years ago, or even last month, we do things differently every day because you learn stuff, right? You learn new things. It's just the best way to do it. So don't don't feel like you're not ready for it, take that fluke out there. You will find some fish. You'll catch them. Just pretend you're bass fishing. That's it. Find some bait. Pretend you're bass fishing around the bait. And by bait, I'm referring to mullet. Find some mullet. Lafayette. What size hook is that? That is a 3/0 Mustad. You want to be real nerdy. The product number is 39944-BN. This is a 3/0. It's tiny. Works great. Those are the same hooks that I troll when I'm trying to catch a sailfish or a mahi most of the time. They do well. I've caught grouper on them. We've caught very large red snapper. They hold up well. Thanks for answering the question. Thanks for watching, Richard. I appreciate it. Let's see here. A bunch of people from Navarre. Appreciate you guys watching. Never been in the Gulf in my kayak. Any advice? Yes. Go with a friend. If the weather's bad, don't go. First time you launch a kayak in the surf, you should do it without any of your gear. You don't want to launch in the surf and then mess up. If you do launch in the surf and go, remember, after 9, 10 a.m., that wind's going to pick up, the wind is going to shift, and the beach is going to get grosser. You need to know that. If you go out, going through the surf is easy. Coming back into the beach, although we don't have a giant surf, people make silly mistakes. Usually the last 10 yards, 5 yards, 3 feet, right where that water hits the beach is where people flip over, get turned sideways, lose track of the kayak, think they're home safe, and then the white water will end up flipping your kayak over and breaking all of your rods. Brian just said wear a life vest, life jacket. Yeah, don't go out there without it. Definitely recommend going with a buddy. Try to find someone who has experience. There's tons of local Facebook groups where there's always people going. Navarre has a pretty unique thing these days. If you go to any of the majority of the public launches, there's probably 10 kayaks there waiting to go. And the truth is, most of the people don't have that much experience. So you're probably in the same boat. So pick someone that you can trust. Spend some time with them. Don't do anything foolish. Don't have an ego. I told a story a while back about you have to be man enough to tell yourself that you're being stupid and turn around and go home. If you get there and the weather report is not what was you expected or it's bad, don't be afraid to sit on the beach. Go back to the house. Don't be afraid to drag your kayak across the beach and then get down there and be like, I shouldn't do this. Because if you're thinking you shouldn't do it, you should not do it. Last year, I told a story. I didn't have any clients. I wanted to go fishing myself because I don't get to go fishing very often, or I usually just point. I dragged my kayak down to the beach. I was ready to get in the kayak. I got in the water, and that water was rough. And it was beating me up pretty good. There was no one else around, no one on the beach, and I turned that kayak around, drug it. Well, I didn't turn it around. I slid to the back of it, and I pulled it backwards up the hill onto the beach, and went and got my wheels, and I went home because it wasn't worth the risk. Don't do anything that you're not ready for, because when you go to come back in the surf, going is one thing. Your heart rate's going to increase, especially the first time. When you go to come back in that surf, if you're not ready or have an idea of what you're doing, your heart rate is going to go higher, which means you're probably going to panic, and you're probably going to try to do something stupid because you're not thinking clearly, and you're going to break all your stuff. Keep that in mind. Definitely recommend going with a friend. Pick a calm day. Make sure you're comfortable with your kayak. I could go on for days about these things. I see a lot of guys who they buy kayaks and they're like, yes, I want to go in the Gulf. Just because you watch someone post a picture doesn't mean it was easy, right? Doesn't mean they did it under bad conditions. They did it safely with knowledge. But I watch guys buy kayaks, have no idea how to use them, like no idea how to put the pedals down. The first thing they do is they want to launch in the surf. Be familiar with your gear. Know where everything is. Make sure everything is organized. Don't have a measuring board sitting on top of the kayak that as soon as a wave touches it, it floats off. I've seen all kinds of random things like that. Don't be that person. Go out there with nothing. Make your life easy, okay? And then go back to the truck. Go out in the surf, launch in the surf, go out, come back in, go out, come back in. Get comfortable in your kayak, in the surf, beach the kayak, then go get your rods. Take the time to learn to do the little things. You won't have any problems, okay? and you'll be able to do it safely. I think that's all the rambling I will do for today. If you do have any questions, just shoot me an email at nick@navarrekayakfishing.com. There was a question in here about openings left for snapper season. Maybe one or two, maybe. Now, we have had Skylar help out, so we've been able to run 2 trips every day for the majority of snapper season, which has been nice. We were able to fit a lot more clients in that way. Go ahead and shoot me an email or give me a call tomorrow, and I'll double check the calendar. We'll see if there's any openings, okay? Are those 2X strong hooks or standard wire? Oh, they're just standard wire, nothing special. I didn't want a big hook. The reason we use the small ones is if you're going to hook a cigar minnow in the nostrils, you don't want to use too thick of wire because it'll break out the bridge in their nose and they come unhooked. I want to be able to toss it in there easy. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching. I'm going to push the finish button. Let me know if you have any questions.